Electoral Act. And here we are approaching an election year, or we're already in an election year, and approaching a series of elections, and most of us don't know what the Electoral Act says. So we thought that it might be a good idea on the African Leadership Series to explain to a lot of us what the Electoral Act really says. And that's why we are here today, to see what the Electoral Act says and what we're going to do about it, and how we're all going to get involved. You know, I spoke at a forum in Port Harcourt, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, and they were asking me to talk about the leader that Nigeria needs, the leader that Nigeria leads. And I was saying to them that Nigeria may never get the leader it needs if we're not careful, because the system has been rigged to fail. The system has been rigged to fail. And unless a lot more of us get involved and start to get active in whatever way that we can, then we may not be able to get the kind of leader that we truly need in this country. Okay? Too many people are passive. Too many people are not quite involved. Too many people are not interested. And too many people are not doing what they need to do. And they're expecting that by some magic, or by some prayer, or by some act of God, Nigeria will just transform itself just like that. I can assure you that that is most unlikely. It's most unlikely. Somebody said all that it needs for the society to get destroyed is not for the wicked to be in power or in situation, but for the righteous to remain silent. And too many people in Nigeria who consider themselves righteous and capable have remained silent for too long. And that is one of the reasons why we are now getting very involved and very active in the Nigerian Leadership Series and the Nigerian Leadership Scene, and also in the leadership of Africa. Our guest today is a graduate of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and he also holds a master's degree in international business law from the prestigious Boston University in the USA. He was called to the Nigerian bar in the year 2003, I beg your pardon, 2003, and also is an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. He has close to 20 years experience as a transactional solicitor, litigation attorney, focusing on infrastructure and public-private partnerships, finance, taxation, real estate, and health law. He is the managing partner of DF Legal, a full-service law office in Lagos, and sits on the board of Rector Place Legal Academy, a training institution accredited by the Nigerian Bar Association to provide continuing legal education for lawyers in Nigeria. He is an ordained minister of the Redeemed Christian Church of God and very passionate about saving souls for Christ. He also helps the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Lagos Province 88, as their legal officer, and is a member of the Provincial Council of the RCCG Lagos Province 88. Please welcome with me Ralph Nwoke. Ralph Kedu.
Thank you very much, Pastor.
You are most welcome, and I want to thank you most sincerely for agreeing to talk to us on the Electoral Act 2022. But maybe by way of introduction, if you have anything further to tell us about yourself that I may have missed out, or that's one. Two, you need to explain to me what DF Legal stands for. DF Legal stands for. And then number three, I want your opinion, your real, deep, sincere opinion of the state of affairs of Nigeria, where we are and how we got to where we are according to your own perspective. It would be nice to hear that. Thank you very much, Ralph. God bless you, and you are most welcome.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you for this opportunity. I must start by saying, excuse me, that I've followed you for years, and I feel really honored and privileged to be on this platform. I would also say that you've been one of my mentors over the years, even though I've not met you one-on-one. So I really appreciate this opportunity. DF Legal, you've said pretty much, you've summarized my profile. I think for this purpose, I would leave it at what we have so that we don't take too much of our time. But DF Legal started off as Dele Farutimi and Co. Started by my principal partner Dele Farutimi. And in 2017, when the firm expanded and admitted new partners, Festus Eniri SN, Abiolo Gundare, and myself, the name of the firm changed at that point to DF Legal. That was supposed to represent the change that had been made. It wasn't just Dele Farutimi only. It was an expanded partnership with other lawyers on board. So in summary, that's the history of DF Legal. We're a full service law office. We do a lot of transactional solicitors work. We do litigation work also. And also we do a lot of real estate also. So we have different departments with lawyers who have specialized experience in different areas that we offer services in. My sincere view of Nigeria, I think Nigeria is in a very sad place. Prior to 2015, when the election was coming in 2015, there was a lot of optimism, especially after the election. I recall that I went to do a course in Hungary, and
I think he's hung. Back end, can you check, Olu, what the matter is? Or if you can call him to reset. While we're waiting for our speaker today, let me welcome everybody on the platform. And thank you all very much for being extremely consistent with being on this platform. If there's any of you that knows any of the presidential candidates or the gubernatorial candidates, and they're willing to be on the platform, we'll be very, very happy to listen to them, to admit them, and to talk to them and have like a vox pop where you all can ask them questions as to which direction they want to take Nigeria. Part of our job on the African Leadership Series or the Nigerian Leadership Series is to do a leadership search, for Nigeria. And we're really searching for leaders at all levels of this country, I was listening to a Ghanaian post by a Ghanaian man just today, and he was complaining even about the state of affairs in Ghana and said that Christmas time, he went to the airport about 5 times, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th of December, picking up people who had come from different parts of the world to come and spend vacation in Ghana. And they all came with a lot of big boxes and everything, and everybody was excited and everybody was happy, and they all welcomed them back, welcome back home. And they had a fantastic Christmas, very, very pleasurable New Year. He says after about 2 or 3 weeks, he found himself repeating the trips back to the airport, carrying all of them back again. They all left again with their big, big, big boxes. A few of them left a few things behind for relatives and friends, and then they disappeared. He says they came, they enjoyed Ghana, they had a good time, they brought a lot of things, left some things behind, but the most important thing that they should have left behind, they didn't. They took it with them. And he says the most important thing. Okay,
Okay,
sorry.
I'm very sorry. I think the internet connection in the office went down because of the weather, so I'm connecting on my mobile device now, whilst my technical people sort out the connection issue. Can you hear me, Pastor?
I can hear you very well. No problem. I
Okay,
hear it's
okay,
raining in Lagos.
okay. Apologies for that.
Okay,
Okay.
let me just finish one story I was telling the audience, and then we'll come back to you to continue. So the guy said they didn't leave behind the most important thing they should have left behind in Ghana. And then the most important thing was their brains. They took their brains with them. It says the most important thing in a man's life is his brain. And because they took their brains with them, they denied Ghana, and we have denied Nigeria of a lot of our intellectual contents and competence to turn our country around. But I dare say that Nigeria will change again. Nigeria will be great again with the things that I'm seeing and what is happening, and the help of God and the determination of man, there will be change. Okay, Kedu, Ralph, yeah, most welcome again. And let me turn it over to you. You were trying to tell us your opinion of where we are in Nigeria. Go ahead, please.
So I think Nigeria presently is in a very bad place. And I was saying that after the 2015 election, there was a lot of optimism, even though for some of us it was cautious optimism, but there was a lot of optimism that the country would recover. And that optimism wasn't just local, it was also international. A lot of people had a lot of optimism. But I would say that today we seem to be on the backward trend. It's as if Nigeria is on a reverse gear and we've not been able to make progress. So I think today, if you look at everything seems to be in a very negative place. The institutions are collapsing. Even the institution I belong to, the judiciary, we've seen the things happening in recent days and all that. So truly, I think Nigeria is in a very bad place. But I'm also very positive. I am very positive because I travel and I see Nigerians, and back home I see a lot of smart Nigerians. I see Nigerians have the capacity to take the country to where it should be. And it's very obvious that the challenge with Nigeria is a leadership problem. That once we are able to fix the leadership problem, then we'll fix our country.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The challenges are leadership. So you are right on the button with this Ghanaian story that I was saying. And what he was saying is that everything rises and falls on leadership. Rises and falls on leadership. So maybe I should backtrack with you also. Why do you think we have gotten this type of leadership in Nigeria? And what do you think we should do as Nigerians to change or get the kind of leadership that we need? The kind of leadership that we need. What do you think we should do? What should Nigeria do? What should the average Nigerian do to get the leadership that we need? But first of all, why have we gotten the kind of leadership that we've gotten? And then two, what do you think we should do to solve this leadership problem for ourselves?
I think the first thing is this. You just need to look at an election day in Nigeria to have a clear picture as to what is going on in this country. I think you have maybe 30-something% participation in elections in Nigeria. And even beyond that, you find that the critical mass of the people I would call the middle class, the smart Nigerians, the educated ones, intelligent ones, they don't vote on election day. I can share my experience with the last election in 2019. I recall that I went to vote just outside my estate gate, and there was a lot of things happening. We were moved from one end to another. We stayed in the queue, and eventually we voted. After hours waiting and the rest, we voted. But when I came back to the estate, I realized that a lot of my neighbors were at home. A lot of them did not make any effort to go out to vote. The bulk of the people on the queue were the people we would ordinarily look at and say, okay, these ones are area boys or they're serious people and all that. So I think the thing with where we are is that Nigerians do a lot of talking, but a lot of Nigerians do not take action when they need to take action. We are not involved in our country. We're not doing the things that we need to do to to transform the system. Because the system will not be changed by angels. Nigerians need to be involved. And a lot of Nigerians are not involved. We're just happy to talk and criticize and all that. Now, the next question, how do we drive the change that we want? I think that change is number one. We all need to truly be tired with what is going on. And we have to be convinced that we need to have a system change. And everybody needs to be involved in that process. Everybody needs to buy into that process. Everyone needs to believe in Nigeria, and everyone needs to do what they need to do to make the system change. And it starts with you getting involved in the electoral system. It starts with you voting. It starts with you understanding what your right is. And it starts with you standing up to defend your vote when you vote.
Pastor, sorry.
Pastor, you're muted.
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. You said people didn't vote, people didn't do this and that. I agree. But now what do we do? What do we do? Here we are at this really serious state of affairs. Here we are 2023. Some people are saying this is a watershed situation. If we don't get it right, there might be no 2027. So what do we do at this point in time, Ralph?
Yeah, so Pastor, I totally agree with those who hold that opinion that it's like a last chance salon. I totally agree. I think that what we should do is part of what you are doing with this call. We need to really promote civil education. We need people to understand that, yes, you have a role to play. You have, some people tell you, oh, my vote will not count. If I go out to vote, nothing is going to happen. We need to educate our people. We need to let them understand what they have to look out for. We need to let them understand that we are all partners in the process of change. We are all partners in driving the country that we want. Now, when we've been able to build that critical mass and we have the people who would invest and be involved in the system, then they can drive the change. Then they can elect the leaders. They, first of all, will understand that the leader I elect today will determine my tomorrow. So I would not, maybe for temporary benefits that I will get from the person out there, and I'll go out and vote. So people really, civil education is the key to it. People need to understand the sort of leaders they need and how the role that they need to play to bring that leader into position. Because we all agree that the problem of Nigeria rises and falls on leadership. It's a selection process that is important. So every one of us needs to get involved. I think that is the only way that we can drive the change that we need.
Yeah, you say we. So who are the we that's going to do this civil leadership and all that? You see, and that's part of the problem in Nigeria. They should do, we should do, who should do? Who are the we that's now going to do this thing, Ralph?
So we are Nigerians, all of us. When I say we, every Nigerian. Once you are up to the age of 18, that's what the Electoral Act says, you have the power to contribute to the change that you want. So when I say we, I mean Nigerians, every Nigerian citizens, even the Nigerian citizens that are not in Nigeria, like the diaspora population who are very interested in Nigeria. Unfortunately, the way the law is today, they can't vote. but they can also drive the change by talking to the people at home and getting them to know what they should do. So when I say we, I'm actually talking about Nigerians. Nigerians need to wake up and really, Nigerians, first of all, need to be tired with the status quo. If you're not tired, and tired is not that you're talking, tired is that you're really, really you talk and you are taking action. So we, when I talk about we, simple Nigerians, Nigeria belongs to us, and the change can only come with Nigerians driving that change.
Okay, Ralph, I'm going to challenge you to really take that up. Already you run this training institution accredited to the NBA. I think you should add to it some kind of civic awareness, some kind of information, some kind of formalized way of reorientating Nigerians in your own sphere, starting with your home, your office, maybe your village, maybe your town, maybe your street, maybe an educational program once a month where you are talking to Nigerians and getting them to see things from a different perspective. I think if every single enlightened Nigerian took this as a crusade, as a course, and did it regularly to different sets of people, maybe you begin to raise the awareness, which is very limited and lacking in Nigeria. So we need to take it up formally and informally and begin to sound that refrain. But let me ask you to look into your crystal ball if you have one, and tell me what do you think is going to happen in 2023, and who out of these 15 beautiful people is going to be the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
Pastor, you're asking me a very difficult question. Okay, but let me backtrack a bit. The issue of civic education, I agree with you, that is a responsibility of all of us. Now, who can be the president of Nigeria? I believe that if you ask me today, and I actually wanted to run away from expressing a political opinion on this call, but if you ask me today, I think we have two parties in the election. We have, I believe, the PDP and the APC is one party, and I think you have the others. And if you ask me, I think the opportunity is open to everyone at this point. I hear people say things like, there are no structures, it's difficult for the third force to come in, and it's difficult to have another person come in and play because election in Nigeria is likely monetized and all that. But I say to people, if you look at the number of Nigerians who vote in elections, maybe around 30 to 35%, if you have the others coming to participate, then things will swing. So as of today, I believe that the opportunity is still open to everyone. I would rather not have the party in power today come back. I would also not want to have PDP back there again, not because I have a problem with anybody, but I think that if we really want to have a change, then we should try something new. That's my opinion. And I would leave the candidate that I would vote for in my mind, and I hope that candidate ends up winning. But I already have made up my mind looking at what we have today, except anything happens tomorrow that is different. I've already made up my mind on who to vote for.
Okay, we'll allow you to keep your secret for the moment, but your opinion is well understood and well appreciated. Are you yourself going to run for office at any stage? Are you going to get involved in the political process?
Not in 2023, Pastor. Yes, would I want to run for office? Absolutely, absolutely. Today, I don't believe that I need to run today. I think I have other roles to play, like every one of us. Every Nigerian shouldn't run for office, but every Nigerian has a role to play in the process. Yes, subsequently, I do intend to run for office, but not today. In the next election, the 2023, the process is even on now. Most of the candidates are already known. So I'm not running for any office in 2023. I don't even belong to a political party as of today.
Okay. I think it's good that you are thinking of running for office. And my second refrain on this platform is that everybody must get involved, register to join any political party of your choice. And even if you don't want to run for office, maybe you want to be part of the executive and the administration of that party, because it is right now the executive and the administration of that party that makes up that delegates or electoral college, or what you call structure, all over the place here and there. So everybody should try and be part of the structure of the so-called political party, because it is at that structure level that the decisions are taken and the leaders are determined. So if you are not at the table, you'll end up being the meal. So that's my second counsel for every one of us. It can be at local government, ward level, whatever it is, people who take decisions at your ward, people who take decisions at your local government, people who decide whether your street is tarred or not, and who becomes your councillor. I'm sure if a lot of us here go to our wards, you'll be shocked at the people representing you in the so-called ward council, and they're the ones deciding what your well-being will be. And then you complain that things are not happening, roads are not tarred, blah, blah, blah. But they can't be tarred because the person who is representing you has no interest in whether the roads are tarred or not, or whether there's pipe-borne water and all that kind of thing. That's not why he's there. He's there because it's a source of a meal for him. And as long as he goes unchallenged in that place, he will continue to lead there. So even at that ward level, local government level, the leadership is poor and porous. Therefore, we must at least effectively change that one to start off with before we're talking about the governorship and the presidential. Now, our discussion today is on the Electoral Act 2022. But before we dive into that in the next minute or so, I would like your opinion also on our constitution. A lot of people are not very happy with our constitution as it stands. And I don't know if you have any knowledge about it. And if you do, that would be fantastic. If you don't, you can pass on that question. And to this issue of restructuring of our nation and so on and so forth. Do you have any comments on that at all?
Absolutely. Pastor, I totally subscribe to the fact that we do not even have a constitution. And I know sometimes when we say things like this, some people say, oh, you're not being practical, you're being too idealistic and all that. But I totally subscribe to the fact that we do not have a constitution. I believe that, look at the constitution. It starts by saying that we, the people, and all that, blah, blah, blah. But the constitution is merely a military decree. Now, but how do we practically make it work? If you look at the book written by my partner, Bele Farotini, Do Not Die in Their War, and the sequence that followed after that, and you find a draft constitution that is attached to that book. I worked substantially on that document. I believe that Nigeria really needs to be restructured. Nigeria needs to go back to regional governments like we had under the 1966 Constitution. Nigeria needs to go back to the parliamentary system because I believe that the presidential system is too expensive. And I do not think, even though I had my education partly in the United States and I've seen the system work there, but I don't think that the presidential system is designed for nations, developing nations like African nations and all that. I think that because Nigeria has become greatly divided over the years and it's become worse in recent times, Nigeria will be better off if we allow the different regions to have some kind of identity, to control their resources, and also to be able to determine their destiny to some extent. Now, if we do that, I believe we'll have a lot more stability in the system, we'll have a lot more productivity, because the challenge with Nigeria today is that productivity is almost zero. There is no incentive for productivity. When we run a system where people can go to Abuja and go get money monthly, then there's really no incentive for productivity. So I think the constitution needs to be taken down. It needs to be taken down. We need to have a completely fresh constitution for this country to function effectively. That's my opinion in relation to the constitution.
How can we go about effecting a change in this constitution? What do you think we should do to inspire this, or to encourage this, or to get this happen?
Okay, so I've heard people say that we need to go back and constitute a conference of the ethnic nationalities and all that. But I see a legal problem with that, because as much as we believe that the system today is broken, but the system is there. And there's a presumption of regularity in law. There's a presumption that the laws you have are regular and everything. So you have to work within the legal system. I know that the National Assembly as we have it today will not be inclined to push the sort of change that we desire. But I'm hoping that we will be able to elect people. And that's why there's something you said that actually resonates with me. When you talked about looking beyond the presidency and the governorship position and looking at the legislative houses, the local government and all that. We need to start by electing people into the different levels of government who have the best interests of the nation at heart. If you do that, the National Assembly today has the power to amend. They have the power to change the constitution. Now, if the National Assembly and the political leadership of the country, the executive branch, if they are committed to driving a change, then we can have a legislative process with the people involved, with the people contributing to it, that will give Nigeria a brand new constitution. So I believe that getting a new constitution can only work within the legal framework that is presently existing. If you decide to take down the legal framework, you're going to have anarchy.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's now go to the Electoral Act 2022. Okay. Can you please give us the highlights and the summary of that Electoral Act, what it is designed to achieve, and what the average citizen must know as they go to prepare to vote, and what the booby traps are, and what we should all be looking out for?
Okay, so the interesting thing about the Electoral Act is that it seeks to make sweeping changes. And these changes include looking at it on the surface, even though I have the opinion that some of these changes are not really skin deep. But on the surface, it seeks to make very sweeping changes. It seeks to legitimize some of the technological introduction that we had in the 2015 election, which were not actually legitimized under the 2010 Electoral Act, under which the 2015 election was conducted. For example, the use of smart card readers. If you recall, if you followed the events after the 2015 election, and if you recall the case that emanated from Rivers State that challenged the election of the present governor of Rivers State, when that matter got to the Supreme Court, the only reason why the election was not overturned was because the smart card as it is, as we had it at that time, or the PVC as we call it, was not legitimized by the existing legislation. So what we have today is that this act is trying to move Nigeria from the anachronistic electoral system that we have and try to move us into a more modern electoral system. But I honestly don't think that that is really modern skin deep. Why I think so is that it's as if the focus on deployment of technology is only around the conduct of election and transmission of results, which the Act actually provides for. But we can see with the challenges we have today with people registering that the technology may not have been taken as far as it should. For example, my mother is presently staying in my home, and she registered somewhere different. She didn't register in the Lekki area, and she wants to move her She wants to move her registration to the Lekki area. My mother is over 70. And for her to do that, she needs to go somewhere, queue up, wait for some electoral officer, put up an application to transfer her registration, and then get a new voter's card. And that doesn't make sense to me. If I can have an ATM machine and I live in Lagos, and from Lagos I go to maybe Yeldu in Kebbi State and I'm able to use my ATM machine, why don't we have a voter's card that one can simply probably just go online and put in a few codes and be able to transfer your voting registration to somewhere else? So I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but on the surface, it looks like technology has been introduced. Also, there's also an attempt to introduce some form of credibility into our electoral system. Like if you look at the way the Act tries to regulate party conduct of party primaries and increasing the time when campaign can be done from 90 days to 150 days, you see that there's some kind of reformation that seeks to bring in some level of credibility and open the space for more participation. Because if we have a very short period for people to engage, then some of the things we're talking about today, like the third force and all that, they would not have a chance to truly engage. So I see also an attempt to bring some credibility into the electoral process. And also, I also see the Act has attempted to address some of the events of the past, all the happenstance that we had seen in the past. Like in the Kogi election that brought in the sitting governor, when the election started, the candidates, I think Prince Audu Abubakar, if I can recall his name, died before the actual announcement of the election result. And there was this confusion as to who takes over and all that. The deputy who ran with him on that ticket believed that he was right to take over from where they had gone together. But we see what happened with that. Went to court, the party substituted the candidate, and the court upheld that. The Electoral Act seems to have tried to address that in situations like that, the running mate would simply just take over. I also see that they have made provisions to make the system more accessible to people with disability, like blind people, provision of brailles, the electronic devices are meant to be compatible enough for people who are visually impaired to be able to participate in the system. But I see a lot of drawback with the system. Something else I need to talk about is also that there seem to have been some level of financial independence for INEC. That's the electoral body, the commission. What the Act has done now is to say that all the funds that INEC needs for election would be released to INEC 1 year before the general election, unlike what used to happen before where the minister needs to approve funds and all that. I think that also will give INEC the latitude to be able to take decisions without some level of control. But I also see a lot of challenges with the Electoral Act. Number one challenge for me is that I travel and I see Nigerians everywhere. Almost everywhere you go to, you find Nigerians. And a lot of these Nigerians really would love to come home if the system works. And that's why you see them, a lot of them are very interested in the things going on back home. Now, it's very sad that this Electoral Act and the extant laws as we have today in Nigeria makes no provision for people to vote outside the shores of Nigeria. In fact, you find some nebulous provisions in the law that says that you can only register in places where you are resident. So you have to only register. You have to show evidence that you are you even have a right to register within the constituency where you are. And that sounds really very, very awkward for me. So I think that there are lots of changes. And you find inconsistencies in the law. Like, for example, funding of elections. It says that for chairman, if I can recall, I think for position of chairman of a local government, you cannot spend more than, if I think 10 million, or I can't remember the exact figure now. I'll get it and I'll come back to you. But the same law also says that you can donate 50 million to a candidate, more than the candidate can spend in an election. So I see inconsistencies. I also see a lot of challenges with use of language and things like that in the law, which could also be indicative of how challenged our educational system has become over time. So whilst this is a good attempt, I believe that there's still a lot to be done to give Nigerians a credible electoral law that will give us credible elections.
Okay, so maybe I should maybe get you to repeat some of what you said before, or say a bit more. Number one, what should the average unsuspecting public person note as they go to register to vote, and as they go to vote? What are the things the person should know as they cast their vote and wait for it to be counted, so that they can be able to count relevant and legitimate votes and know that their votes would have the necessary outcome? That's question number one. And then question number two comes from what you said, in that there's still a few things that can be done to make it a more effective law, and so on and so forth. Maybe you can mention a few of those things and let us know what to do and how to, if necessary, if we agree, get them incorporated, maybe in an amendment to the law, and so on and so forth. And if you can take instances from other countries that have what you consider to be a suitable and good electoral act, although one may not fit the other, it might be nice to also hear.
I think number one thing is this. It's important that everyone understands that we run a system that allows for secret ballots or secret balloting. Can you hear me, Pastor?
Yeah, go ahead. A system that does what?
So we run a secret ballot system in Nigeria. It's very important for everyone to understand that. Now I'm going somewhere. If you look at the challenges we've had recently, INEC seems to they are making all the nice sounds. We have an electoral act that is better than what we had in the past. But we have this challenge of vote buying. Now, the only way vote buying can work is that somebody pays you money, and then you go and vote, and you come back and you show the person had voted for A, B, and C. Now, if there is no way for you to show who you have voted for, vote buying will not be effective, because people could collect money and they go out and they vote for whoever they like and they come back. I'm not trying to advocate that people should take money to vote. So it's very important that we understand that, number one, as a Nigerian citizen, you have the right to vote. You have the right to vote. And also that your vote is the right to protect the identity of who you voted for also is also a right under law, but the system is a secret ballot system. Now, if we all understand that, then everybody within the electoral space, everybody within maybe the polling units and all that, can also stand up against this thing. If you see anybody being influenced unduly, is going out to vote, and then somebody's waiting for him to show him or her the ballot paper, then you can stand up against that. So what we need to know, basically, I don't even think that we need to bother ourselves too much about the complications of the law, the legal. We need to know that we have rights as vote, and the persons we vote for is our right. We have the right to protect that identity and not to be influenced by any other person to vote for whoever they want us to vote for. Now, talking about systems that are more credible or more easier that we should copy, I think that what we need to look at is ease of access. One of the challenges, and when we talk about not having a lot of Nigerians participate in the electoral system, is because of this problem of access. A lot of people feel uncomfortable about, take for example, when I registered to vote, I had to be on the queue for almost 4 or 5 days. I had to leave my work. I went to queue. I'll go there as early as 4 a.m. to join the queue to be able to register. A lot of people don't want to do that. So if we need to make the access easier, for example, in the United States, people can even vote by mail. I don't think we are there yet, but we need to work out a system that allows easy access. We have data everywhere. We have the BVN, for example. We have the NIN, for example. Why is it that we cannot bring all this data into the system and be able to use the same data to register people? If I'm going to do my NIN, they're able to access my BVN details. Why don't we have the same thing with the electoral system? So I believe very strongly that there is a need to make this incorporation of technology into the system more than what we have today, and make it easy for the people to be able to access, because the system is designed for the people. If the people are unable to access the system, then you continue to have the challenges that you have with the system.
Okay, so essentially, easy access is what you think we should look at
Yes.
as a way of improvement, and also measures to ensure that votes cannot be bought, and so on and so
Yes.
forth. What about
Yes.
the issues of the collation of the results? Has the Act been able to take care of that, in that now it's the results are transferred electronically, and therefore the issue of collation center, is it illegal, or is it not no longer necessary? And then where technology fails, so some people get to some places, they say the card reader is not working, some machine is not working, the thumbprint is not this or that. What does the Act say as the recourse or alternative? And then the issue of, in those days, thugs used to carry ballot boxes and run away with them. Then there's some practical things, if you are making notes, that actually do happen in election. I'll give you 2 or 3 of them. One, materials don't arrive on time, and therefore some people, the voting starts late, and this and that. Some people have said that some of these things are deliberate to prevent some people from being able to vote. Number 2, you don't even know where you are registered. It happened to me too. I think the last election or the last local government election, yes. I had to go to about 5 polling booths before I finally found my name somewhere. And the officers there were not very helpful. No, there was nobody who could really tell me, even with my PVC, where I should go. They themselves seems at loss for information. That's the other thing. The other one is that sometimes when they see people of a certain name, this is what I'm told, people of a certain name and so on and so forth, they make it difficult for them to be able to come out to vote that day. Either they shut their polling booths down, or nobody shows up, and so on and so forth. Then about the 5th or the 6th one that I heard is that they put some polling booths in some areas where access is limited, in some Oba's palaces. You may have 2, 3 polling booths in an Oba's palace. And the Oba, we all know his political leaning and inclination. And therefore, it doesn't allow you access if he thinks he knows what your inclination is, and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts, and what can we do, both in terms of the Act and in terms of individuals, to mitigate against these things that may affect the fairness of the outcome of our elections? Are you unmute yourself, please?
Okay. Okay, sorry, I didn't know I was muted. The Act seems to have made a lot of provisions to address a lot of the challenges that you talked about. For example, before now, where the voters card spell or the voters readers, the smart card readers are unable to be used for accreditation, then you will resort to manual accreditation. But what the Act has done now is this, where you are unable to do accreditation through the electronic means, and the replacement machine is brought in, and you're unable to also proceed with accreditation on the replacement machine, then the election in that unit is shut down and would then be done on another day. However, if the results from that unit will not substantially affect the result of the election, then the election would actually even be cancelled completely in that unit. Now, the issue of collation. Collation used to be one of our major challenges. I spoke once to a professor who was a returning officer, and he told me his experience of how they were intimidated, people were shooting, thugs were making so much trouble, and they were under a lot of pressure to change things and all that. So you have all these things around the electoral ecosystem. But what the Act has done now is to provide for INEC to have real-time data on their websites. Collation and accreditation is done manually, is done electronically, and as it's being done electronically, it's being collected into a central data, and the results are being transmitted as people vote. However, in practice, how this would work is still left to be seen, because we know that we have a lot of challenges with infrastructure in Nigeria. And the challenges, for example, if you're on this call and you're having problems with the internet and all that, that also speaks to the infrastructure challenges we have. And all the issues around terrorism and all that, telecom equipment and telecom installations being destroyed and the rest. We do not know how all this would work. But on paper, what we have today seems to have taken care of most of the challenges with transmission, most of the challenges with accreditation. Like I will tell you one thing, there's a key change that has happened in the Act as it is now. Before now, how do you define overvoting? Overvoting is when the number of voters, the people who have voted, the number is actually more than the number of registered voters in the polling units. And remember that our election turnout is usually around 35, in worst case scenario, maybe 40%, maybe not more than 50%. So what used to happen was that gave some kind of room for some form of rigging. So when you have accreditation happen and you have a certain number come in and do the accreditation, and they then vote, then people will stop the ballot boxes with the extra number of people who were supposed to vote in that unit did not show up because everything was manually done. So if you had accreditation at 30% or you have 70% votes, as long as the voting is not more than the registered voters within that unit, then the votes will be accepted. The voting in that unit will not be cancelled. But today the Act has changed that. Once the number of votes is more than the accreditation in that unit, and accreditation can only happen when you physically appear in the unit and you present your voter's card, your permanent voter's card to the officer that should do the accreditation, who will then accredit you electronically the way the law is today. Once you have more votes than the number of accredited voters, then the voting in that unit will be cancelled, because that is clear definition of overvoting under the Act as it is today. Then on the issue of intimidation, the Act has even gone beyond intimidation on election day. It's even made provisions for people trying to stop people from registering. We heard certain stories like in recent times, like some areas where we have a lot of people from the southeast, like around the Alaba area and things. We've heard that some people try to vote and some people try to stop them from voting. The Act has actually made that an electoral offense when you try to stop people from actually registering to vote. It's also made an electoral offense to even intimidate people on election day. So you have all these nice sounding things under the Act. Fantastic looking provisions. But we need to wait and run a full election cycle and see how this would work in practice and how the courts would interpret this thing. Because I see a situation where if election is cancelled in the unit because of probably overvoting or because the machines were not working, I see a situation where people would challenge this in court and say, oh, I've been disenfranchised for no fault of mine. I presented myself and the machine did not work, so I want this election cancelled. And someone raises the Electoral Act, and that person says, no, the Constitution is the ground norm, the Constitution gives me the right to vote. This provision of the Electoral Act, as long as the contract is the provision of the Constitution, it should be null and void. So I see all that happening. I believe that there will still be a lot of legal challenges around the Act, but as it is today, it seems to have addressed most of those challenges.
Yeah,
then
but
the issue of, you said something again, sorry, there's one more thing I did not address. The issue of materials getting to voting units late.
I think we've lost him again briefly. He was talking about the issue of materials getting to voting units late. And I'm sure that he will talk about that when he reconnects, the issue of materials getting to voting units late. I think there's just a lot of inefficiency in the system that is not just the act that is the problem, is the competence of INEC also, and the efficiency of INEC. That is also the problem, and we need to look at that very, very well. Also, there's this issue of canceling an election because of overvoting. I think that is a bit unfair. It's unfair because I've gone to vote, I've cast my vote legitimately, and then somebody is saying that more people than were registered voted. Whose fault is that? It must be a connivance with INEC. INEC is to be blamed if they are now recording more votes than people registered. So they should take the blame for that. Somebody should be sanctioned. The relevant officer at that polling booth is the one that should be sanctioned. That how come in his polling booth there's more voting than were registered? You know, he should be sanctioned. He should be taken to court. He should be charged to court. He should be jailed if necessary. If he cannot offer a proper explanation as to how that happened, and then the election should be rerun. They should come back and vote, because here I am. I have voted. My vote is legitimate. I've registered there, and I need to give my vote to my candidate. Then somebody deliberately overstates the thing, and then they cancel my vote. I mean, that's an abuse of my fundamental human rights. And therefore, I'm suggesting that we look at that again. That's one of the things I'm going to suggest to him, because a smart group of people can just arrange a whole group of overvoting, knowing that in my own area, where I'm very, very popular and I'm guaranteed to get the votes, they overvote the place and they cancel all my legitimate votes. That cannot be acceptable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. Pastor, sorry. I totally agree. Sometimes I get kicked out by the network. I don't know what's going on. It's part of the infrastructure challenge that we are complaining about. I totally agree. I see a lot of legal challenges to provision.
I hope the Electoral Act is not working against you and I'm making you overvote or kicking you.
Is a little bit low. Can you exit and join back again?
That's if he can hear us. I think he doesn't have a choice. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. The other thing I'm going to be asking him about is that it is reputed that some very smart and strong politicians have bought the police, they have bought the security forces, they've bought the judiciary, they've bought INEC. So INEC, everybody's in their pockets, and they are the big paymaster. And therefore, what does the Electoral Act have to say about this? I think those are two critical questions that I want to ask him. But nevertheless, my encouragement to everyone is that this election, we must all come out and vote and stay to get the votes counted and make sure that our votes count and have a record of the results of the place where you voted, so that when the results are announced, you can compare to what the outcomes were where you were. And that way we serve as a check to this process, and we let the people know that that's exactly what we're going to do. We serve as a check to that process. So any returning officer or any officer in charge of a polling booth who manipulates the results, we get their names, their number, everything, and we ensure that they are chargeable to court or they are sanctionable. If the results arrive that's not consistent with what we all counted. I think in this elections coming, we all must be civically aware and we must be ready to play our role and be our own watchdog and our own police people in this thing. And the government and the INEC and the judiciary and the police needs to hear that this is what the citizens of Nigeria are saying, that we're not going to tolerate any kind of forceful or subtle or something abuse of the process and a challenge of our rights to determine who it is. We must make sure that the very minimum, no matter who emerges in this election, that the process is as free and as fair and transparent as possible and a reflection of the will of the people. Already in the so-called primaries that a lot of these parties have had, including some of these smaller parties and so on and so forth, they've all been rife with irregularity all over the place. Different results being announced here and there, the votes that people cast not counting, leaders of the party changing the results to suit whichever candidate they preferred, usually for whatever reason or monetary reasons, people selling positions for money, the rules and the delegate system, delegates being switched at the day of voting, delegate buying all over the place, being hoteled. Some even are being given prostitutes or whatever to comfort them, alcohol being bought all over the place to comfort people and get them to vote. Delegates being held hostage, bossed, hoteled and locked up and made to vote one way or the other. I mean, the whole process is just rife with all sorts of things and underinformed people. And anything that is bad cannot produce something good, no matter how it happens. If the foundation be destroyed, what can the people do? And this is really a call to all of us to be aware, to rise up, to spread the gospel, to spread the news, to let people know that this is what is going on in Nigeria. And if we're not able to correct these things, then we cannot have pipe-borne water, we cannot have education, we cannot have schools, we cannot have tarred roads. You are wasting your time complaining if you have not done the work and the complaint that will make sure that it is the right person that emerges. I don't know if our principal,
yes, sir.
are you back?
Pastor, I'm back. Apologies.
Okay, let me hand it over to you before I start interviewing myself.
Okay, I'm very sorry. Okay, so I was saying that I see a lot of legal challenges to this act when the elections are eventually conducted. And you actually touched on some of these things. Because what the act has done is to give the commission power to cancel election in areas where, for example, you have overvoting or where the card readers do not work properly, even though the act says that, yes, they'll fix the election for another day in some of those units. However, where the results from those units will not substantially affect the overall result of the election, then they can actually eventually cancel the results in those areas. So I see a lot of challenges to this because people would say, I see people saying, well, why would you cancel election in this unit when I came out to vote and I queued up and I did all I'm supposed to do? But because your system is not functional, then I'm unable to vote. So I think that there will be a lot of problems with the Electoral Act at the point of implementation. So we just need to wait and see what will happen in 2023, because it's too late in the day to begin to propose changes. But what we have today is much better than what we had in 2010, and we expect a lot better results from what we have today.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open the floor for people to ask questions. My co-presenter Sonny is on the platform. He may have one or two questions to ask, so that you can clarify to people what they need to do. And also, you may make some comments as to what the candidates themselves need to watch out for in the understanding of this Electoral Act as it affects the people who vote for them. So please do that, and also take this question from a guy called Bolahon Olojede. Thank you.
Okay, so for the candidates, let me use this opportunity to address something that has been quite topical lately, the issue of placeholders. I think the candidates need to be very, very careful with that. It seems like a new word has been introduced into the lexicon of the electoral ecosystem, but you can't find placeholder in the act. Now, what this simply says is that somebody I take for example, the president and
Oh, no. I think he's gone off again. Can you all hear me?
So
yes, sir.
Pastor, sorry. Can I continue?
Please continue.
I'm very sorry for these interruptions. I'm actually moved to my mobile phone because I was having a challenge with the office internet, and calls just keep coming and interrupting. I'm really very sorry. Okay, so talking about the candidates, I think they really need to look at this placeholder thing. Is a banana peel. As it is today, the law actually says that a candidate, the people running for president, the presidential candidates and the governorship candidates, picking placeholders as vice presidential candidate. Now, these people are supposed to hold that position until they find the most suitable person to come in. But if you look at the act as it is today, Section 29 of that act allows the candidates to withdraw. However, there are conditions upon which candidates can be taken out. For example, the candidate dies, certainly the candidate is gone, or the candidate voluntarily withdraws. So if you have a situation where you have picked someone and the person then decides, I'm not going to go, he's not voluntarily withdrawing from the system, then you are stuck with that candidate. So these are things that candidates need to really look out on. And they also need to look at the sticky issue of election expenditure, because the act simply stipulates what you can spend as a candidate, even though there are really no proper mechanisms for tracking some of this expenditure. I didn't see those mechanisms in the act. Like there's an upper limit of 5 billion for presidential candidates and 1 billion for governorship candidates, 100 million for Senate, people running for Senate, and 70 million for House of Representatives, and then 30 million for state houses of assembly. We want to wait and see how this will be tracked. So these are some of the things I think candidates really need to look out for. And they also need to look out at their nomination process. Be sure that you have submitted the right documents, that you have information you have fed it's correct and not information that can be challenged after the election, because those things could become banana peels at the end of the election.
I don't know if I can ask make my comments now.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Bola Olojede.
Okay.
Please unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the brilliant discussion we had so far. Mine is a comment on the Constitution. There, you had said that the Constitution, I mean, you practically don't have a Constitution. Apparently, this is a common comment because it is believed that we did not sit down, and that Constitution starts with "we the people," and there was no "we" that sat down and wrote that Constitution. That is the basis. But you see, in my observation, there are not many countries in the world where people actually sit down, where everybody was involved in the writing of constitution. In fact, some countries don't even have a written constitution, and they are still properly governed. In America that we said we copied, America's constitution was written in 1787. And in that 1787, just try and picture how many Black Americans do you think were at that table? There were 55 people that wrote the Constitution in 1787. How many women do you think were there? How many Red Indians sat at that table? How many non-landowners were represented at that table? Not many of them. These people just did a wonderful work. And America has only made 33 amendments to that Constitution since that time. So my point is, there's this emphasis on the fact that we don't have the right Constitution. While I agree that there are so many things we need to amend in the Constitution, but it shouldn't stop us. If we cannot obey the dictates of the Constitution that we have now, what says that we will obey the dictates of the new Constitution when it is written? The starting point is that right now, whatever we have, let's be able to obey it and work with it while we make moves to see what we can amend and what we should not amend. That's the comment I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bola. I think that's a fair comment. And I think maybe I'm going to allow Ralph to talk about it because he's a lawyer, and then I can then make my own comment. Ralph?
Okay, comment that he just made. You see, when I started, I said something. I said I'm a very practical person, and I don't believe that we all have to sit down and write a constitution for the constitution to work. The challenge with the Nigerian constitution is the imbalance in the constitution. And considering how divided Nigeria has become, this imbalance. I give an example. The constitution as we have today encourages consumption and not creativity and not productivity. I think it's important that we empower the regions to become productive. We empower people to control their resources and become more productive. That is why I started by saying at the very beginning that the process of the framework that we presently have, the National Assembly that we have today, if we elect the right people into positions in the National Assembly, positions of leadership, then we can drive the process of changing the constitution we have to a constitution that addresses our problem as a people. Like, give another example. We talk about the American system. I love the American system. But the Nigerian constitution as it is today, considering the income profile of Nigeria, considering the challenges that we have, it's a very expensive constitution to run. to something that is more practical, considering the income level of our country. A constitution is more cheaper. I believe very strongly that the parliamentary constitution that we had in 1966 is the best constitution, and bring it to 2022 or 2023 and expect it to work. We can take the same constitution, rework it to meet our modern realities as a country, and then make it work for our own people. I honestly think that Nigeria needs to move from the presidential system. It is way too expensive. And we need to move to a constitution that makes us more productive. And that constitution would have to come from the assembly. It's not possible to gather people from Ohafia, from Yaudu, from all over the country to sit down and give us the constitution. That is not practical.
Why are you picking on Ohafia now? Why did you mention Okegwo, my hometown?
Because I'm from Ohafia, sir.
Oh, you're from Ohafia.
I'm from Ohafia.
You are being partial to yourself. But that's our first constitutional war. How can you say Ohafia? You didn't say Ohim, you didn't say Okegwo. Now we're at war. But I think what the gentleman said resonates a little bit with me. First of all, what is the process of constitutional change and also the process of constitutional amendment? How do we kick it? How do we kick it in? What do we need to do? Is it getting your member of parliament to move for it, and then we get one or two of them to, what's the process? Or do we take the country to court and say, no, they must change our constitution, so that some of us know what to do and get everybody to sit around the table?
Okay, so there are three processes to kickstart a constitutional change.
Yeah.
Okay, there are three processes to kickstart a constitutional change. It could start from the executive introducing an executive bill. It could start from you introducing a bill as a private citizen, maybe through a member of parliament representing you. It could also be driven from the parliament itself, from members of the parliament. That's in Nigeria, there's the Senate and the House of Representatives. However, the process is quite tedious. It will top majority in the two houses pass the amendment, and then the same amendment is taken around the houses of assembly or walls of assembly. It pass that provision to be amended. I think we need to start amending the Constitution. Interestingly, the left conduct referendum that have been provided for under the Constitution, and the only place we see referendum in the Constitution is the creation of states. But I think that we can incorporate referendum where you have the debate on these bills, they pass these bills, and after they pass this bill, then it can then go to the public for the public to then vote. And if you have the majority of the people saying yes to, maybe a simple majority of people saying yes to some of the provisions, then you could have had an amendment done. So the amendment usually.
Well, I see, Ralph, that you are quite passionate about this constitutional business, and you have very, very strong opinions, which largely are your opinions, and I'm sure one or two Nigerians may not agree with that opinion. And it is largely because they do not agree that the constitution as it is has remained. What I'm going to suggest is that we get DF legal. Are you listening? We get DF legal to commence a process of constitutional amendment or change or transformation or reform. I don't care how long that process takes, but we need to kick it off. And maybe your firm will be willing to take that up as a civic right and civic responsibility to kick off a process of challenging whatever government is in power as a citizen of Nigeria to change or amend this constitution. Either let's go back to the 1966 constitution and amend it, or let's take this one that we have, take out all the things that are inimical to growth and progress according to us, and put in the right things there and push to the assembly, push to the state assemblies and everything, and just go through the process and let Nigerians know that this process has actually started. A lot of people keep talking about change constitution. I haven't seen people now say we are going to take it up and do it. And I think ALG through you will take it up and do it if you are willing to do most of the work for us. And please, it has to be pro bono, I beg, because we don't have any money to pay any lawyer to change a constitution that he himself will benefit from if the constitution is changed. So we all have to put hands together and pro bono the thing and get it done. Okay, my good friend Anthony Ugebo is out there in New York, and maybe wants to bring the New York Constitution into Nigeria. Well, let's hear what he has to say.
Okay, maybe after Anthony, I'll take questions.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. So the thing about the Constitution of Nigeria, I'm not a lawyer, but this is what I know, and I don't think anyone will argue with this. In Nigeria, we are different civilizations. In other words, our histories, we're different. So what we had in the 60s before Emmanuel Ifajuna and all that, the first January 15th coup, where Awolowo, Zik, and Nnamdi Azikiwe agreed to how Nigeria should be, was very original, foundational. We moved from that to this madness. So the issue about the Constitution is that it needs to be reworked, not based on local governments, where if I have more local governments than you, no matter what it is, I dominate you. And therefore, the interest is to have more local government no matter what. So that's a big time fraud right there. So if you respect the various civilizations and you have a constitution that mirrors the foundation as started by Nnamdi Azikiwe, Awolowo, and Ahmad Bello, then you're original to what Nigeria should be. And then we go at our own pace. That's what I want to say about that. Because the whole thing about everybody come together, no, that's BS. The real deal is it's been rigged based on the circumstances we found ourselves on the events of the 60s. Now let's fast forward. I have one other thing I have to say about the lawyers. Why do our lawyers put on this colonial wig? The wig of slavery. They're so brilliant, the males and females, that you're a lawyer. Why can't they come up with an idea that is more civilized than this wig? I mean, it pisses me off because what it does is saying we can't think for ourselves, we can do better. We put on all these wigs and all that, and I'm sure those wigs are made in the UK. And I mean, I don't understand. Can you help us tell the legal system over there they should stop putting out this wig? That's what I gotta say.
I think that is fantastic. Why lawyers wear wigs? Maybe it helps them to think better.
A black man puts on blonde wig.
A white
what
wig.
Is that?
And he's very proud about it. But that was part of the British colonial methodology. There's a man called Lord Macaulay, I think in 1854. He says the black man is so organized, he's so well developed, he's so well established that unless we do certain things, we'll not be able to overcome them. So he says we have to make them think that everything African is inferior and everything white is superior. And that is why today, my dear friend Anthony, you are wearing a white man's t-shirt, you are wearing a white man's trouser, and you've gone to America to get your education. It's part of the weak culture. So they make us feel that everything that we have is inferior. They call it idolatry, idol worship, and backwardness. And they make us feel all over the world, and they've been very, very good at it, feel that everything British, champagne, caviar, suits, ties, white men's wigs, trousers, the cigars, and all that is inferior. And all of us, almost without exception, suffers from one inferiority complex or the other. Whether we want to admit it or not is a different thing. Even in Nigeria, if you want to go to NNPC for a meeting, you go to a co-hotel, you hire any white man that you can see on the road there. Either he's a sailor, a mechanic, electrician, whoever it is. Just hire him, put a suit on him, take him to NNPC and sit. The reception you will get is different from if you go by yourself or with your clerk from the office. You know, this is the mentality that we have, even in Nigeria. You understand? So part of my crusade is that we need a total reorientation of Nigerians. A total reorientation of Nigeria. My friend, Pastor Gandhi, wanted to become the Oba of Ogbomoso. We Christians were quarreling and fighting. Why would Gandhi go and become an Oba in Ogbomoso? What is this? What is that? What is that? Isn't an Oba a leader and an influencer? Why shouldn't he be Oba in Ogbomoso? Oba should be equal to idolatry. And even if there are things of tradition and custom that are non-idolatry, why can't he observe them and do them? But you see, that is the mentality that we have. When I was a pastor in the Redeemed Christian Church of God, I'm sorry, Mr. Ralph, they make us wear suit and tie all over the place, giving us the impression that unless you are wearing a tie or a suit, you can't preach. The other day, one of my pastor friends came to Trinity House, and he was wearing up and down, and I invited him to the stage. He said, I know that he's not wearing uniform, so he can't come to the stage. I found it ludicrous, and that's what the mentality they gave me in Redeemed Christian Church of God. Even the day I came to Trinity House and I said, wear anything you like, some of my Trinity House ministers were trying to resist me, that they are going to abuse this, we must wear suits. I said, you wear anything you like, just dress decently and dress nice. You know, that mentality, we must break it, all over the place. Even me now, as I'm talking to you, I'm wearing shirts. It's Oyibo shirts. Because I mean, we have problem. Anyway, Mr. Sonny Enebi, you have a comment or a question? And sorry, Mr. Ralph, I'm taking over your platform today somehow, but I'm really, really very pained. But let's, Sonny, ask your question and then Ralph can respond.
Ralph, okay, there's this topical issue. I don't know whether this is part of the Electoral Act or is what INEC requires. Must you present your primary school or secondary school certificate, or you can simply leave it blank, in view of the controversy that is all over the place in respect of one of the candidates? That is one question. Then the second question is electronic transfer of results. It is allowed now for them to transfer results electronically. What are the pitfalls you see with come in before the paperwork comes out? They don't have electronic result, or the paper result and the electronic result are different. What does the Act say about those, if there are any discrepancies at all? So I'd just like you to attend to those two. Thank you.
Okay. Pastor, can I go ahead now?
Go ahead, please.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, awesome. So let me start by talking about the earlier questions. So number one, the challenge you threw at us on amending and driving the process of constitutional change. We've actually done some work on this. If you look at the book written by my partner, Do Not Die in the War, and the second one, the imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution, you would find a copy of the proposed constitution for a new Nigeria. And that's the document I worked on practically developed constitution for a new. So we have a draft that we have proposed, and that draft is for people to discuss and adopt and see how that can work. One of the things we've tried to do with that draft is even give role to some of the traditional institutions. I hear you talking about Anoba and the rest of it. So what I did was replace the Senate, for example, with the House of Chiefs, which is pro-traditional institution, coming more like an advisory representative, and then have a parliamentary system. But that stopped the whole wig and gown thing. If you've been following the news in Nigeria, I'm sure you would have seen some guy dressed as a juju priest and eventually went to the Federal High Court dressed. I don't think we should go that far, but I think that it's time we also drop some of these colonial relics. That's what I call them. In the United States, nobody wears wig and gown anymore. So it's time we move on. These things are not even suitable for the Nigerian system. The environment is too hot for the wig and gown and things like that. Now, let me go to the topical issue. Now, the Constitution as it is today does not say that you have to submit your primary school certificate. Now, let me take the position of the president. If you look at Section 130 of the Constitution, it gives you the qualification that the president, or what the conditions that you have to meet to be the president of Nigeria. Number one, you must be a citizen of Nigeria by birth, not just a citizen of Nigeria. So if you have gone through the process of nationalization, acquire citizenship, they said you were born in Nigeria. So you have to be a citizen of Nigeria by birth. You have to be a member of a political party and be sponsored by the police. That you must have been educated up to school certificate level. You have to be educated up to that certificate level or its equivalent. So once you show that, the Electoral Act says that you have to submit your form with an affidavit. So in the affidavit, you would depose to the fact that you have the relevant qualification. What's the requirement as it is? Because there's nothing in the law that says that you have to submit a certificate. However, that can be challenged. You see, but that as it is today. Now, the law says that where a candidate has submitted information that are incorrect. So, for example, the candidate says, I have been able to put that in his affidavit and submit that. And Ralph, sitting down here, I know this candidate is lying. The law as it is today says I cannot go to court. I don't have what you call standard law, which is the right to go to court. I wouldn't have that right to be able to. What the law says today is that the only people who have the locus standi to be able to challenge what a candidate has deposed to it is affidavit. So, for example, let's take, for example, in the last APC primaries, and let's say one of the candidates from that primary, okay, let's take, I know that this question is all around Asiwaju. So let's say that someone is not happy with what Asiwaju put in his affidavit, or maybe he believes Asiwaju doesn't have some of the qualification that he says he has. We can challenge that. The only people who can challenge that will be those who contested in the same primaries with him. For example, Rotimi Amechi or the vice president or the other candidates. So the Nigerians are generally excluded from being able to challenge information that is in the affidavit submitted by candidate, even though they know that those things are wrong. I think that is one of the challenges, one of the shortcomings that we have in that law that really needs to change. Now, the next thing about electronic transmission. Yes, I get the I'm sorry, I'm back on again. Please, can I go on?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So I know that with electronic what the Electoral Act has done is provide that there would be records also. You're going to have ballot papers in the election process. However, the way the Electoral Act is drafted today is that voting because when you talk about the details that would eventually go into determining into consideration the accreditation numbers and all that, the Electoral Act as it is today has made it so strict that you have to rely on the electronic accreditation. So if the electronic accreditation fails, then even transmission of results, or even if you have paper result, it cannot work because you have to have had electronic accreditation, which would also be transmitted remotely. So the law as it is today, the system has to work. The electronic system has to work. If the electronic system fails, they will have a challenge with the electoral process. And I think that is INEC's work cut out for them very clearly. They need to make sure working with the right people within the system and people who have technological know-how to make the system work effectively so that they can deliver credible elections.
Okay, so I think Victor Izeja has a question or the other that he wants to ask or a comment.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Good evening,
Good
Pastor.
evening, Victor.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I want to ask a question regarding the issue of final rejection of candidates submitted by political parties. For instance, APC submitted names of 3 candidates in the person of Ahmed Lawan from Yobe North and former Akwa Ibom governor Fabio and Bonny State governor. And INEC rejected their names, saying that they didn't participate in the primaries that they monitor. So now the APC National Legal Advisor wrote a document he submitted to the National Working Committee, advising the party to ask INEC to accept those names or they go to court. That electoral law did not give INEC powers to reject the name of any candidate. So what's your reaction to this in regards to the provisions of the Electoral Act?
Okay, we know that the Electoral Act gives INEC the powers to supervise the party's primaries. The parties are supposed to give prior notice to INEC. INEC sends representatives to supervise the party primaries. Now, if you look at Section 29 of the Electoral Act, you cannot substitute the results from those primaries. You cannot change the conditions for change. It's simple. It's either the candidate is dead or the candidate withdraws from the election. So where you have candidates already, like I take for example, like what is happening with the Lawan's case, I'm not very conversant with the other ones. There is a candidate already for that election. The record of that candidate is already with INEC. That means it was submitted to INEC. Now, the party wants to change that candidate. The law is very clear. You can't do that. Except that candidate is dead, or the candidate voluntarily withdraws from that process. If none of the two happens, that candidate remains the candidate for that election. That is what the law says today. So even though INEC do not have power to reject candidates submitted by political parties, just like lawyers say, but what the lawyer is not saying to you is this: where the party has already given information to INEC, they can't go ahead and change that again. So the question would be, how did INEC get the names that they now want to substitute? Somebody submitted and the political party did that. And INEC supervised the process of actually electing those people in the primaries. So if they step down, without that, you can't change it, except the person dies, natural death, or something happens to that person, you cannot substitute that candidate.
But what about this issue? Maybe you've addressed it before, I wasn't listening, of this APC and Labour Party that they have put in some dummy name, they say, for vice presidential position, blah, blah, blah. and they're hoping to placeholder and they're hoping to substitute. What is the position of the law or the Electoral Act on that? Please educate us.
Okay, so the issue of the placeholder is a very interesting one. Is a new word that's been introduced into our electoral ecosystem. So what's the placeholder really? If you look at the, like I said before, if you look at the Electoral Act, you will not find the word placeholder or the phrase placeholder. What happens is that people are picked, like you said, and they go in, and we know that they're going to eventually change them, just like APC has done as the Labour Party. Now, the Act is very clear and simple on this. Section 31 of the Act makes it very clear that a candidate can withdraw. A candidate can withdraw. Now, but for there are conditions. Number one, the candidate has to voluntarily withdraw, or if the candidate dies. So if any of that happens, then the party can change the candidate. Now, if it's a candidate that has been elected in a primaries, take for example a presidential candidate or candidate for the Senate, the law says that the party shall within 14 days conduct new primaries. But now in the situation where you are dealing with the vice presidential candidate or the deputy governorship candidate, you are dealing with candidates who were not elected in primaries. They were picked by candidates that were elected in primary, but they can still withdraw. If they withdraw, provided, because that's what the law says, it can only happen within 90 days before the general election. So if they withdraw before 90 days before the general election, then the candidate that picks them would have the power to substitute those candidates by replacing them with another running mate that will run with him. So that is a loophole in the law as it is today, and that loophole is being exploited by these parties. So they can actually change those running mates. They can change them as long as the running mates voluntarily withdraw. However, if they refuse to withdraw, take for example the guy in Labour or the guy in APC says, I'm not withdrawing, then you are forced to run with that candidate. You can't do anything about it.
Okay, very good. I don't know if there's any other person that has any questions. Okay, Tunde Akpelogun will take this question and then we'll begin to round up.
Pastor Ituah,
Sir?
I know you have said that you are an Ijoman or a Do or something like that. And that puts you into Nigerian bracket of South-South. And every time you have brought people to speak on this platform, they are either Igbo, Yoruba, or Hausa Fulani. Well done. You are proud of being a Nigerian. But from the situation on the ground now, Yorubas don't want to be governed by the Hausa Fulani anymore. You understand? Yeah. You see? So,
I'm relieved. I thought you were going to throw me out of Nigeria. I was getting a bit worried.
No. Yeah, you will hear where I'm going to throw you very soon.
Don't throw me.
No, you are not going to be thrown out of Nigeria. But Nigeria is not existing. There's no Nigeria.
Oh, God.
Somebody have said that the Constitution is not good. Of course, the Constitution was a fraud. Whether you look at the 1966 or you look at the 1999, the Constitution has always been rigged. It's a fraud. So the Yorubas are fed up of being dictated to under any rigged constitution. Now, the situation now is that Yorubas don't believe that they are Nigerians. What Asiwaju did was good in the circumstances that he did it. And what he did was to bring another Hausa Fulani into power, because he had to make sure that the another party came into power apart from the PDP. So he succumbed to another Hausa Fulani coming into power. But the fact that they had an arrangement that after Buhari, he will be the next president does not guarantee that he will ever win any election come 2023. Now, if he does not win election, where is he going to go? And if he does win the election, maybe they rigged the election for him, and then he went on and swore the oath of making Nigeria one by force, by fire, even against the wish of the Yoruba people. Yoruba people have gone to the United Nations now, and they have been recognized as unrepresented nation. So whatever the Yorubas are doing is that they are eventually going to set up an alternative government in the Yoruba land. Now, you will be having a federal government doing the same unitary government as they are doing at the moment, controlling the police, controlling everything from Abuja, from the north. Now, there will be an alternative government in the Yoruba land trying to control the Yoruba land. I don't know how it's going to play out, but the thing I'm going to throw at you is this. You see, I like people from Ijo, people from Edo. They are fantastic people. But you see, every time there is a problem in Nigeria, the possibility is that they are always aligning themselves with the Igbo people. Now, there's another avenue that you can align yourself with the Yoruba people. You see, there was a voting done for Cameroon, and Cameroon said, I cannot be part of Nigeria. Cameroon population is much more smaller than the Yoruba people, who are between 60 or 70 million. Yeah? You have Yoruba people who run to Togo. They run to this. Everywhere you go around Nigeria, there's a large population of Nigeria, talk less of Britain. Now, the issue is that I'm advising that the Ijaw, the South, the Edo people should either vote that either they go and join the Biafra, the Igbo people, or they want to join the Yoruba people. And because the major tribes in Nigeria are either Hausa, Fulani, just put those two in bracket, and then the Yorubas and the Igbos. Now, I don't know the population of the Ijaw, the South, but you see, they are nice people. They can vote to be either part of the Yoruba or part of the Igbo, so that we can have peace in that country. You see, with the constitution as it is, you see, in Nigeria, we are tribal people. We are tribal. And the people in power now will not relinquish power. They will not want to change the constitution. And when Asiwaju wins, he cannot change the constitution because there are more representatives coming from the states that have been created in the north by rigging election, by rigging population. They don't want any proper population or census to be carried out again in Nigeria. We may be deceiving ourselves. In a country that it was easy for a white man to tell you that your constitution is not good, your makeup is not good, your culture is not good. It's not only in Nigeria they were able to do that, because they had something to offer Nigerians to convince them that they are superior in terms of administration, in terms of technology, in terms of building roads, in terms of education, without the alphabetical that the British people brought to Nigeria. I don't know how we will have been communicating now. If you go to Igbo land, they manipulated the English alphabet to suit their own. If you go to the Yoruba, they change the English alphabet to suit their own. So no matter how we resent the British for changing whatever they change, whether you think they are colonialists, whether they think they manage Nigeria wrongly, or whether they manage the rigging of the election in 1966, 1959, or whatever population, it's now 62 years. If we have our brain to use, like the Hong Kong people did, Singapore did, India did, we should not be blaming them after 60 years. They have left us. So if it is not working for over 62 years, why do you think it's going to work again in the next 4 years, whether Asiwaju wins or not? Let us face the reality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, let me tell you categorically that we will not join Yoruba people. Neither will we join Igbo people. We will have our own nation. and I'll be the president. So go and go and take that one to the bank. But
I
nonetheless,
say
let us
amen to that, Pastor. I say amen to that.
that is debatable. So anybody who doesn't like that one can come and meet me in the trenches. So we will all have our nations. But yeah, I think to some extent you are on the you have a point in that. But that's part of what Ralph was saying, in that we can still come round a table to discuss and converse. You know that Nigeria as itself is even an aberration. No Nigerians sat together to create Nigeria. We were forced together by our colonial masters. So they were good in some aspects, they were not good in most aspects. And they did not design Nigeria for Nigerians. A lot of people don't tend to understand that. They designed Nigerians for the benefit of the colonial masters. You know, I asked Olu to do a research for me today on the division of Africa. The division of Africa, there was a Berlin conference, the partitioning of Africa in 1884, where 7 European countries sat down, England, France, Belgium. They did horrible things in Congo, Spain, Portugal, Germany. They sat together and they divided Africa among themselves as charters and ownerships, and they organized Africa. Till today, the French Francophone Africa, they're not really independent. Their central banks are tied to France. And you are right that 62 years after, we Africans, we Nigerians cannot wake up and take our destiny in our hands. Even till today, we still run to Britain, we run to America for help all over the place. Security, we are going to Israel, we are going to America. We are begging them to give us ammunition. Why can't we manufacture our own? We started a defense industry, we ran it aground, and so on and so forth. So we need to wake up and smell the coffee. And instead of looking for progressive things, we're fighting amongst ourselves to divide oil, north versus south, south versus east. And we're still enslaving ourselves and selling ourselves to the white man. I think it's preposterous. It's just unfortunate. And this is part of my crusade, that we should all wake up and smell the coffee and try to run our own affairs as best as we can in this international world that we find ourselves in. Anyway, Uncle Ralph, thank you very, very much for coming to this platform today. We have truly, truly gained from your experience. Please give your partner, Mr. Faro, to me my love and my regards. We're actually on the same flight out of Nigeria. It was very, very nice and refreshing to see him. I won't tell you where he's hiding. It's our secret. But I think he has come to hide away from you people in Nigeria for a few days and get his sanity back. You know, I think, Ralph, you gave him too much trouble in that Lagos. So, but there we are. Thank you for being part of this discourse. Ralph, you must run for office. What did I say? You must run for office. What did I say? You must run for office. What did I say? You must run
Yes,
for
sir.
What did I say?
And I will, Pastor, I will run for office.
You must run for office. You
I will
understand?
run.
And then stop wearing wig of the white man. You understand? My friend,
Pastor, if I ask you, did you see the man dressed as...
I saw him. I was presently amused. And I thought we should put that in our constitution and in our electoral act, that lawyers must now dress like juju men. I think it was that juju that drove away your chief justice. I think that's what frightened your chief judge, that he ran away from the Supreme Court. When they finally brought juju to
that the guy just resigned.
They finally, he said, I didn't know it was this bad, though. We didn't know it was this bad. They finally used juju to drive the old man. You know, but it's very interesting. When they say we must wear this, we must wear that, We must wear hijab to school. We must not wear hijab to college. We must do this. We must do that. So some people say, well, we'll go to school without shoes. We'll go to school carrying shokono and say this is our natural costume. Anyway, so Ralph, please run for office and save us in this Nigeria.
Yes.
We have had enough. Can I have your closing comments and we can bring the platform to an end today? Once again, I thank everybody for coming. God bless you all. Nigeria will be great again. Please go and get your PVCs. Go and study the Electoral Act. If you don't know it, Ralph will be happy to explain it a bit more to you. And Ralph, I'm sure you and Dele, you go and push for us to have this constitutional reform, whichever way it is going to be. We want a reform to that constitution that will at the very least get our freedom for us and get us to get all our resources out of the ground in Nigeria and build a prosperous Nigeria where no one is oppressed. And if, like my other friend says, we decide to all go our separate ways, so be it. As long as everybody can thrive, that's okay. Some of our population, Yoruba people, they were bigger than France, were bigger than Germany. We can rule ourselves. So that's fine by me, as long as we can all come to agreement and agree to disagree. So Ralph, let us push at the moment for this constitutional reform very, very aggressively. And let's see where it will take all of us to. So that's an assignment from the ALG. Please take it up and make it happen for us. We'll discuss. In fact, there's no more discussion. Just take it up and make it happen. Let's have your closing comments, please. God bless you. Sonny, please follow up with Ralph on this constitutional thing. We must really change this constitution. And if there are any amendments that we want to propose to the electoral law, let's do so also. Okay. There's a guy called Ibrahim Pam. Ralph, you must get to meet him and both of you must try and walk. And also Yemi Kandi Johnson, SAN. He has some thoughts on the constitution too. All right, Ralph, closing comments, please. We can't hear you.
Yes.
Or you've gone to pay 100 million naira for the office.
Okay. So it's very important that we realize that. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
No. Come on. Okay.
Go on,
so
go on.
Nigeria belongs to all of us. Yeah, Nigeria belongs to all of us. And if we realize that Nigeria belongs to all of us and not just to the politicians, then
I can't hear you again.
we would then also agree that
We can't hear him. We can't hear him. Anyway, it's been a good session today. I want to thank everyone and thank Ralph again for being on the program. God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend to come. And please go and get your PVC. God bless you. Have a good evening or good afternoon, wherever you are.
Good evening, Pastor.
Thank you.